Okay. So last week we got into the story of destruction of Jerusalem. The Roman army laying siege to the city of Jerusalem, and how the zealots amongst the Jewish people, the Brayone, would not let the Jewish people leave the city to make peace, and they burnt down all the storehouses because the Jewish people had enough supplies to last them for many years, and they wanted to wage war, so they burnt down all the supplies, and it became an impossible situation with the people starving. You remember the Gemara brought the story of the woman, the wealthiest woman in the city at the time, who eventually dies because of the situation then. And then we discussed that finally the leader, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, had smuggled himself out of the walls, and he goes to speak to the general at the time. Okay? We spoke about the beginning of the dialogue between Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and Vespasian, who then was not yet Caesar, and he was leading the siege. And he said, "Why haven't you come till now? Why are you calling me king?" And that whole discussion that we had last week. Now the Gemara continues with the discussion. We're on the second column on page 56b1. During the discussion, Rabbi Yochanan and Vespasian were having outside the walls, a messenger comes from Rome. Amrle, he says, "Kum, demisle Caesar, arise, for the Caesar has died. And the dignitaries of Rome have decided to appoint you as the new Caesar." So just like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had predicted, when he meets him and he calls him king, because he says, if God is delivering the city of Jerusalem to you, you must be a great king. His words were fulfilled immediately during that conversation when the messenger came from Rome and says, Caesar died and you have been appointed the new Caesar. Vespasian at that time was only wearing one of his shoes. So he had put on one and he had not yet put on the second shoe. As he was trying to put on his second shoe, it wouldn't go on. Ever happened to you? You're after a long flight and your feet swell a little bit and you try and put it on, it just doesn't go, right? So he has one shoe and the second one just not going. So he tries to take off the first shoe that was on already, and it wouldn't come off. His feet have swelled to such a degree that he can't put on his other shoe, and he can't take off his first shoe. Amar, he asked Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, "My hi, what's going on?" Amar le, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai answers, "Lo titzta'er, do not be worried about what's going on. Shemua toiva asilach. You just received good tidings. You heard some good news, and now you're going to be the king." And what happens when someone hears good news? The joy that a person feels from hearing good news could make their physical body swell. Tichsiv, as just like it's written in Proverbs, Shemua toiva tidashin atzim. Good tidings fatten the bone. Yeah, it's a verse that physical body is affected when we are happy and pleased upon hearing good news. Ella maitakantai. So what could he do? What's the remedy? He can't walk around forever hopping around with one shoe on and one shoe off. Lisa inish Find someone who you don't like, some guy who you can't stand looking at his face. Tell him to come in front of you. You'll get so disgusted by seeing him, the swelling will subside, and you'll be able to put on your other shoe. Tichsiv, as it's written also in Proverbs, V'ruach necheyat yavish garim, a broken spirit dries up the bones. Okay? So when his high spirits now are broken by seeing this person who he dislikes, his body will come down to normal size, or the swelling will subside, and everything will be fine. Avid hachiyayel. So he does this, and his shoe goes on, everything works. Amr Leiv, Sebastian says to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, you're such a wise man. Why didn't you come earlier to talk to me? Why did you wait to come until now? Same question that he asked previous. Amr Leiv, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai replies, have I not answered you earlier that the Bar Yonai, these rough Jewish people who were controlling the city, would not let me leave? Amr Leiv, Vespasian says back to him, Anon Nami Amr Lach, I also answered you. Right? What did he answer him? You remember from last week? Anybody? The keg of honey. He says if you have a keg of honey with a serpent wrapped around it, you take a rock and you kill the serpent, and you break the honey barrel to kill it. You don't worry about saving the honey when it comes to killing a serpent. You should have destroyed the walls of Jerusalem, and you could have gotten out to see me. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai doesn't answer that one. The second time he asked him the same question. Of course, we have the Gemara saying that God prevented him from coming up with an answer because God didn't want him to answer, but the rabbi said, we have a good answer. We could have answered, if we have a barrel of honey wrapped around, and there's a serpent wrapped around, we take a big pair of tongs and we pull off the serpent and we kill it. We don't have to lose the honey, right? But the Gemara tells us that God prevented Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai from having the wisdom to answer that one. Amr Leiv, Vespasian says to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, I'm going back to Rome because now I'm no longer the general, now I'm the Caesar. I'm the head honcho. I'm going to send some other general to finish up the business with destroying Jerusalem. So ask me a request and I'll give it to you. Amr Leiv, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, Ten li Yavne v'chachma. This is the famous request, the foresight of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who says to Vespasian, please save the city of Yavne and the wise man who studied there. V'shushlita Rabbi Gamliel, and also save the family of Rabbi Gamliel, the Nasi. Vasvasa demasya le Rabbi Tzadok, and send a good doctor to heal Rabbi Tzadok. Okay, so 3 requests he asks. 1, don't destroy Yavne, the city where all the Torah scholars would study. Save the family of Rabbi Gamliel, who was the priest, who was the head of the court, who was a direct descendant of Judah, from the tribe of Judah, who ultimately we have King David, and ultimately we have the Messiah, right? Rabbi Gamliel is a direct descendant of King David. And number 3, send a doctor to cure Rabbi Tzadok. Remember from last week, we've had the story of Rabbi Tzadok. For the benefit of those that were not here, Rabbi Tzadok fasted for 40 years because he wanted to arouse God's mercy not to destroy Jerusalem. So for 40 straight years he fasted, and his body and his insides shrunk to such a degree that he couldn't eat. And the Gemara last week discussed how for nourishment they would bring him dry figs and he would suck out the juice in order to get some nourishment. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is asking to please send a good doctor to heal Rabbi Tzadok. So the Gemara is going to explain the 3 requests. Korei ale Rabbi Yosef v'itim Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yosef, or some say Rabbi Akiva, says the following verse about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Meishiv chacham achar v'daiti misakel. God turns wise men backwards and makes their thinking foolish. Kind of like the Gemara last week that said that Rabbi Yochanan didn't answer the parable of the snake and the honey. Here again, the Gemara is saying that God forces Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai to ask for foolish requests instead of asking for something smart. Why? He could have said, leave him alone this time. The Jewish people slighted you. Forget about it and give us a second chance and don't destroy Jerusalem. Right?
I was going to ask that. Why didn't he ask the guy to save the temple?
That's the Gemara's question. Yeah. The Caesar just died. The new Caesar is here talking to you. He's impressed with your wisdom. He's giving you a request. Why don't you say, save Jerusalem? Right? That's why the Gemara is saying that God made him say something foolish because he could have asked for Jerusalem. So now the Gemara explains why he didn't ask for Jerusalem. V'husavar, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai thought, Dilma kulei hayle'avid. Such a big request when the whole Roman army came all the way to Jerusalem, laid siege to the city, and I asked him to save the city, that's not going to happen. And if I ask, B'hatzola Porta Namilehavi, even a small favor of saving Yavner, saving the family of Rabbi Gamliel, that also he's not going to grant. Okay, there's a concept we have, tefasta meruba like tefasta. You try and grab too much, you get nothing. So the guy's in a good mood. He's going to give you a request, but if you ask for something that he can't give you, he's not going to give you anything. You lost your opportunity. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai didn't want to ask for Jerusalem because he knew he wouldn't get it. So he asked for something smaller that he had a chance of actually having his request met.
On Tisha B'Av, I read something from Rav Kook. He said that the second temple had to be destroyed at one point or the other, because if the second temple would still stand, there wouldn't be a third temple.
That's right. Commentaries speak a few points in this story saying that it was inevitable. The temple had to be destroyed. The prophet had already prophesied about the destruction. So the only thing is maybe he could have asked not to kill so many Jewish people, not to take them slaves. But the fact that Jerusalem was going to fall and the temple would be destroyed, that was already written in stone. God had already made that decision.
Could I clear something up?
Yeah.
But they did leave a remnant behind. Is that correct?
Of what?
Of people, of Jewish people. When there were a few left behind. There must have been.
In Israel itself, there were Jews who lived there. Yes, there were Jews who managed not to be taken captive and brought back to Rome or sold as slaves. There has been a Jewish presence, albeit very small, in Israel since the destruction of the Second Temple. So there always has been Jews there.
In Hebron especially.
But there was enough that how many years later, 70 years later, they had a big revolt against the Romans.
The Bar Kokhba, but that wasn't Jerusalem. Yeah.
Well, no, but it was Israel.
Some people remained there, like Bar Kokhba and Rabba Beit
Yeah.
Kiva.
There definitely were people in other cities, considerable amount of Jews in other cities. But at this time, the Romans did take probably the majority of the people who were living in Jerusalem when they captured it and brought them back to Rome.
Many moved to Galilee.
And you could see the depictions on the Arch of Titus today in Rome of the Jewish people being brought in chains to Rome, right?
Carrying the menorah.
Carrying a menorah, I would say. Not necessarily the menorah.
When they were allowed to take the menorah.
No, it was the Roman soldiers.
Oh, the Romans took the... Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So
There were many menorahs in the temple.
There were many menorahs, yes, as we say in Hanukkah. V'yidliku neros b'chatzos k'shacha. The Jews lit candelabras, plural, in the courtyards of your temple. So there definitely were many candelabras. How many of them looked like the menorah or details, I don't know.
I read somewhere that in the second temple, in the kind of basement there, they had warehouses that they had spare menorahs and stuff those things.
The Gemara tells us that certain things were hidden. Yes,
those things could very well be.
Certain
in the
things
temple
were not even there during the second temple.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first temple had the Ark of the Covenant, right?
Yeah.
From the times of Moses, with the tablets inside. It wasn't in the second temple. The leaders of by the destruction of the first temple hid it, and they never brought it out in the second temple. They were worried that it would fall into the wrong hands.
I
And we
wonder
don't
how
know
they
where it is
decided
today.
who stays and who doesn't.
Yeah. Okay, so let's
Okay.
continue. Okay, so what happens next? So he didn't ask to save Jerusalem because he knew he wouldn't get it, and he wouldn't even get a small request if he would ask for such a large request. So he asks for the city of Yavne and the family of Rabbi Gamliel and for a doctor. So what happened with the doctors? The doctors who cured Rabbi Tzadok, Mahi, what was the treatment that they administered? The first day, they fed him water that had bran soaked in the water. Yeah, they took the bran from the grain, soaked it in water so a little bit of nutrients would leach into the water, and then they gave him the water to drink because he couldn't eat. Lemachar maya disipuka. The next day, they fed him some water with a mixture, in which a mixture of coarse bran and flour had been soaked in it. So a little bit thicker, it had some flour. Lemachar maya de kimcha. The next day, they fed him water which had flour mixed in. And they gradually increased more and more flour and the water would get thicker, until bit by bit his intestines widened and were able to start accepting normal food again. Okay? The Gemara goes back. What happened next? Azil Shader Letitus. Vespasian went back to Rome. Who did he send to take down Jerusalem? The famous general Titus. Va'amar. There's a verse in Deuteronomy, in Zinu, I believe, that says, "Where is their God, the rock in which they sought refuge?" The verse says, God disappeared. They came and asked, "Where is God?" God used to protect them. He's not there anymore protecting them. The Gemara tells us this verse refers to this period in history when Titus finally comes and destroys into the temple during the destruction of Jerusalem. What happened? This verse is talking about Titus. He profaned and blasphemed the one above. So what did he do? He took a harlot, a prostitute, with him, and he goes into the Holy of Holies, where only the high priest on the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, could go after immersing in the ritual bath in the mikvah. So he goes in with the prostitute. He spreads out a Sefer Torah scroll, the holiest item that we have. And he committed a sin with the prostitute. He had intimate relations on the scroll of the Torah in the Holy of Holies. V'natal sayev v'gidef hapreches, and then he took a sword and he slashed the curtain that separates the Holy of Holies from the rest of the temple. The Gemara tells us a miracle occurred when this happened. Blood started gushing out of the curtain when he slashed it. And Titus thought, he thought he killed God himself. The Gemara doesn't want to use the term "killed God" because it's not a proper way of speaking. So it says Titus thought he killed himself, but it's a euphemism for saying that Titus thought he killed God. Right? He slashes the curtain starts bleeding. Shenemar, like it says in Psalms, King David says, "Shagot zarecha b'kerv meidecha, samu eisasam oisos." God's enemies roared in the midst of your meeting place. They established their signs as true signs. So Titus sees the sign of the blood, and he decides that he killed God. He misinterprets it and thinks that he kills God. Okay, now the Gemara comments that when God sees this going on in his house, why doesn't he stop it? Why doesn't he strike down Titus on the spot? Abba Chanan says, "Mi kamaycha chasin ka." It says in Exodus, I believe. Also in Psalms. It says, "Mi kamaycha chasin v'kasha." Who is like you, the strong one, God? What is it talking about? What's strong about God? You're strong because you hold yourself back. You heard this horrible, wicked man, Titus, come into the Holy of Holies and do the horrible deeds that he does, yet you still hold yourself back from revenge because you're so mighty. The Academy of Rabbi Yishmael teach, they learn this same idea from a different verse in Exodus. Micha Meicha Be'elim, we say in Az Yashir, we say it every day. Who is among you, Be'elim, mighty ones, God? We say, God, who is mighty like you? And if you take the word Elim and change the vowels a little bit, you could read it, Micha Meicha Be'ilmim. Who is like you among the mute ones? Ilay means somebody who cannot speak. So the Academy of Rabbi Yishmael said this verse could be read, who is like you, God, who is mute, who doesn't speak, that you watched and you saw what Titus did, yet you still didn't say anything. You held yourself back. Obviously, God wanted this to happen. He wanted the temple to destroy, as Ben brought up, right? What happened next? So what did Titus do? Natal saprechis. He takes down the large curtain. Va'aso kimin gargutait. He makes it into a shape of a wine carrier, of a big basket. So he draws the four corners, and now you have this big basket in the middle. He brought all the vessels from the temple, and he fills up his sack, the sack that he made out of the curtain. He takes this big curtain that he has like a sack with all the vessels of the temple, he takes it to his ship to go parade through his city, through Rome, to show his triumph. Shenemar, like it says in the verse, in Ecclesiastes it says, I saw a wicked man who deserved to be buried, yet they came to destroy the temple. Then they departed from the holy place. Eventually, they will be forgotten in Jerusalem regarding what they have done to it. Al tikre kavurim, do not read it kavurim, buried, ella kavutzim, gathered. So there's the verse in Ecclesiastes says basically this is what happened, that Titus came, he takes all the stuff, whatever, and they left the holy place. So the verse says, wicked people who deserve to be buried. The rabbi said, don't say deserve to be buried, change the vowels a little bit, change one letter, and it becomes kavutzim, gathered, because they gathered all the vessels. Al teker v'ishtachu, don't read that they will be forgotten. The verse says that he will eventually be forgotten. Ella v'ishtabachu, they will be praised, because he took the vessels to Rome as a triumph and to be praised. Another way of reading this verse, Ikud Amri, other people say, you don't have to change the two words from buried to gathered and forgotten to praised. You could say Kavor Mamish. It really means buried. Why? Dafilu mile dematman igalilohin. At that time, even hidden valuables, the Jewish people who were worried that the city would fall had hid their valuables. The Romans at the time even found those hidden valuables and took it with them. Even the valuables that they had buried. Okay, so what comes next? So now Titus destroyed Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, takes all the loot, and he goes to his ship to go back to Rome. He's sailing across the Mediterranean. Omad Olav Nachshel Shabiyam Netove. A hurricane comes into the sea, a big storm, and it threatens to drown Titus and his ship. Amar, Titus says, Kimeduma ani she'eleheyem shel elo ein v'ras elo b'mayim. It seems to me that the God of the Jews is only powerful in the water. Why? Bo Paroi. When Paro and the Egyptians came to destroy the people, how did God defeat them? He drowned them in the sea, right? In the Red Sea. Bas Sisroi, the army of Sisera comes. What happens? Tibu b'mayim. The river then, the Nachal Kishon, floods the plains when the army was fighting, and his entire army is destroyed. So Titus is saying, every time God has an enemy, with water he could win, but on dry land he's no match for the might of myself. So now Titus is saying, God wants to drown me in the water of the Mediterranean. Im Gibaru, if God is truly mighty, let God come up to the dry land and fight me there. Right? So he's mocking God. He's saying, God, you have no power to defeat me on the field of battle. The only way you can beat me is to destroy me in the water. Yatsa Baskal V'Amalei, a heavenly voice comes out and says to Titus, Rasha ben Benoishel Esav Rasha, evil man, the son of an evil man, a descendant of the evil man Esav, the brother of Jacob. Birya Kala Yishli Bailami, I have a very small creature in my world. V'Yitushmo, it's called a gnat. Okay, it's quite small, right? Unfortunately, we have one, I think, flying around. It must be the cherries. So God says to Titus, I have this small creature called a gnat. And the Gemara says, why is it called a small creature? My karile birya kala. Why is it called a puny little creature? It has an entrance but no exit, meaning it brings in food but does not excrete any waste. Alele Abasha, the heavenly voice tells Titus, go onto the dry land. Vitasa imah milchama. Don't fight God. Fight that little gnat on dry land, and let's see who wins that battle. Okay, it's a challenge, right? I mean, they're tough to catch, but still. Allah Yabasha. So Titus eventually comes to Rome. He goes up on dry land. Ba yatush v'nichnas b'chaytmai. A little gnat comes and enters into his nostril. V'nika b'maychay sheva shanim. For 7 years, the gnat is picking at his brain and driving him insane. Yom echad, one day, havekachalif abavad de bein apacha. Titus is passing in the market. He's passing through the doorway of a blacksmith. Nowadays, we don't have blacksmiths, but you see them sometimes in the movie where they heat up the metal until it's red hot. And what happens next?
And they pound it.
They pound. You take a big, heavy hammer and you start banging away. And you can imagine it creates a bit of a ruckus. Shama kal arzapta, when the gnat heard this great sound of the hammer banging against the steel, ishtik, it fell silent. It stopped picking at Titus's brain. It was distracted by this incredibly loud sound. Amarika tekante, Titus says, finally, a bit of relief. I have a remedy. What does he do? Every day they would bring a smith from the market and have him ply his trade in the palace next to Titus. They would be banging away, and he had finally had some peace from this gnat that was banging away in his brain. When they had a Roman blacksmith banging in the palace, they would pay him 4 zuz. He would get compensated for coming to the palace to help Titus. But if it was a Jewish smith, he would tell them, for you I don't have to pay. It's a payment enough that you get to see the suffering of your enemy. Okay, he's the one who destroyed the temple, so your payment is getting to see me suffer with this gnat banging away on my brain.
I think same thing happened to Nebuchadnezzar.
Yes, there's a similar story given about Nebuchadnezzar, yeah.
So those 2 people who destroyed 2 temples got the same punishment.
Yes. Either that, or it's the same story that happened to one of them and not the other. I think he comments on it here. I don't remember now, but I think someone comments on the fact that it's the same story and whether or not it happened twice. Okay. What happened next? Ad tlasin yamin avid hachi. For 30 days, this works. The gnat is distracted by the sound of the banging and leaves Titus alone. Mikan velech, after 30 days, kivin the dash. Because it became accustomed to it, it continued hammering away at his brain. It's a very common the Gemara will use this term, kivin the dash many times. Dash literally means thresh. When you bang and you on the grain to remove the chaff, it's called dash, or threshing. Once you thresh it, it can't be threshed again. So it's a term that the Gemara uses. Kivin the dash. Once you've done it, you've done it already. And it's a term it uses here to say, once it happened. It got used to it. It got accustomed to the sound, and it kept pecking away. Tanya was taught in the Brisa. Amar Pinchas ben Aruba. Pinchas ben Aruba said, I myself was among the nobles of Rome. Ukeshemes, when Titus dies, patzu es meichai, they split his head open. Umatza by ketzipar drar mishchal shnei shleim. They found the gnat inside was the size of a swallow that weighed 2 sela, about an ounce or so. So a nice big size. He gives a picture of it here, in case you want. He's got a picture, medieval painting, or how do you say? It's a carving of a smith, and he's got a picture of the type of bird that the size the gnat was.
Wow.
According to that opinion, it was around 2 ounces, maybe the size of a cherry or two. I don't know. B'masniza Tana. The Tana taught in the Brisa, K'goizel ben Shana. Another opinion, it wasn't the size of 2 sela, but the gnat became the size of a 1-year-old pigeon, Mishkal Shnei Litrim, and it was the weight of 2 litra. And a litra is about a pound. So according to that Gemara, according to that rabbi, the gnat was about 2 pounds. A bit larger than an ounce. Amar Abaya says, Naktinon, we have a tradition, Piv shel nachayshes v'tziparnim shel barzel, that God made a miracle, and this gnat had a mouth of copper and nails of iron. In other words, that God made its mouth and its nails very strong, very tough, to be able to cause a lot of damage to Titus's brain and really give him discomfort for the horrible acts that he did. When Titus was lying in his deathbed and dying, Amr lahu, he told the people around him, Liklui lahau gavra, when I die, burn me, ulevadr likmute ashav yame, and scatter my ashes over the 7 seas. So the God of the Jews will not find me and bring me to judgment. Okay? He wasn't a very smart man, but he figures that if they burn his ashes and scatter it amongst all the seas, there's no way God could go find every ash to put him back together in order to bring him to judgment.
Kind of counterintuitive, since his experience was that God was very powerful over water.
Why in the water? You're right. He should have learned his lesson.
Yeah.
If he thought God was powerful in the water, God could... I mean, obviously, in general, he was foolish, because God doesn't punish the physical bodies to begin with. Right? The punishment is on the spiritual level. But he wasn't, the Romans, I guess they worshipped the physical body more than the spiritual body, as we all know. Mm. The Gemara tells an interesting story. And we're not finished with Titus. This is a continuation, I guess. So Titus dies, and he says, burn me and scatter my ashes, so God doesn't find me and judge me. Unculus. There's a fellow at that time. His name was Unculus. He was Roman, and he was a famous commentator on the Bible. He writes a famous commentary on the 5 books of Moses. In most editions of the Chumash, it's actually printed inside, right? The Targum. It's in Aramaic. Unculus bar Colonicus bar Achos de Titus. Unculus is the son of Colonicus, and he's the son of Titus's sister. Some commentaries say he wasn't the son of Titus's sister, he was the son of Hadrian's sister. But either way, he was a nobleman well connected in Rome, who both mother and father belonged to very prominent Roman houses. Havi Baili Gari, he wanted to convert to Judaism. Also Askeletitus bin Gida, he went and he raised the spirit of Titus through necromancy. Necromancy is forbidden, right? The Torah says you cannot communicate with dead people. There are certain types of magic that's forbidden. Necromancy, there's Vidoni. These are different ways that people in the past generations would be able to raise the spirit of a dead person and communicate with them. This was before he became Jewish, so once he became Jewish, of course, it would be forbidden for him to do this. But before he goes and he raises the spirit of Titus, after Titus has died and burnt and ashes are scattered. Amrle Onkelos asks Titus, Man chashabahu alma, who is prominent in that world, in the world to come, where you find yourself, who is prominent? Amrle, Titus answers him, Yisrael, Israel, the Jewish people are the prominent ones in the world to come. Mahulid bukibuhu, Onkelos asks Titus, should I join them? Should I become Jewish and convert? If they're so prominent, maybe it's a good idea, instead of living my life as a Roman, to become Jewish. Amrlai, Titus answers him, Milayu nafishin v'lei matzas lekimine. They have many laws. You're not going to be able to keep all the laws. It's too difficult. It's not worth the bother. What should you do? Zili garbahu bahu alma. Go attack them in this world, in the physical world. V'haviresha, you'll become a leader. If you attack them, you'll become a big guy, a famous guy. Tichsiv, as it's written in Lamentations, Havud Sareha L'Raish, Israel's enemies have become leaders. What do we learn from there? Kol HaMetzer L'Yisrael Nasser Raish. Anyone who attacks and who opposes the Jewish people becomes a leader. Okay? The Jewish people are very important to God, right? The chosen people. And it's not fitting for the chosen people of God to be attacked by lowly people, by people who have no strength. So God makes it that people who actually attack the Jewish people become strong and powerful, because you have to be strong and powerful in order to take on the Jews. So it's kind of like, it seems strange, but it's a way of praising the Jews and saying how great they are, that God makes sure they're not delivered into the hands of weak people, they're only delivered into the hands of very strong people. Okay? I mean, if you're playing a game of hockey and you're beaten by the worst team in the league, don't look good on you.
It'd be embarrassing.
But if you're beaten by the best, the Stanley Cup champions, okay, not a big deal. Because he's the best. He's the best team. They could beat me too. So Titus gives advice to Onkelos, don't convert. It's too difficult. There's too many laws. We have 613 commandments. There's no way you keep them all. But you want to be a big shot in this world, so fight the Jewish people and you'll become a big shot. Amrle, Onkelos asks Titus another interesting question. Dina de hugav b'mai. How are you being judged in the world to come? What's your judgment? Right? It's a fair question. You took on God.
It says here punishment, which presumes he's already found guilty.
Dina means judgment, but it connotes strength. Din is a way of pronouncing judgments on somebody who did something wrong, right? So
shouldn't the English translation should say, "What is your judgment?" It says, "What is your punishment?"
It says, "What is your punishment?" Because the word din, the word judgment, kind of means punishment. How do they judge to punish you, right?
Well, at least the guy was smart enough to figure out he deserved to be punished.
Well, obviously he's going to be punished. He destroyed the temple. He did horrible acts in the temple, and he blasphemed God, and he knows that God wanted to punish him. That's why he asked to be burnt and his ashes scattered. So the question is, what was the judgment? How bad? How did they judge him? Amrle, Titus answers him. V'mai depasaka nafshi. I'm judged by the same fate that I gave myself. Okay, I ruled on my own fate. How? Kol yoyma machnishe leila kimte v'dainale. Every day, my ashes are gathered and judged. V'kolulei mevadra shaviyame, and they're burnt and scattered over the seven seas. So he himself asked to be burnt and his ashes scattered. So every single day his ashes are gathered and he's burnt again. Every day he's burnt over and over again. That's his punishment for all eternity.
The issue of reward and punishment is one of the principles of fate. So when we'll live for 70 years, 80 years, but the reward and punishment lasts forever.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, when I think about it, it doesn't seem like just to live for 70 years and then get punished for eternity.
Good question. Punishment does not last forever.
Oh.
So anyone who's ever lost a parent knows how long you say Kaddish for?
11 months?
Why is that?
Because they have a year or two,
You're not allowed
So-
to grieve over.
So one of the explanations is, what happens if a person sinned? Everybody sins, right? There's no such thing as a human being who's perfect his entire life, right? When you sin, on some level you're disconnecting yourself from God, right? Not completely. Not every sin is not completely disconnecting, but on some level there's a small disconnect. You're hurting that relationship you have with God. How do you fix it? This person goes through a lifetime. He sinned 20 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, whatever it is. There are things that he did, he couldn't help himself. He doesn't get punished. God doesn't have a reason to punish someone. God loves the person. God created them. God put him into this world with temptation. He's not just a vengeful guy who's saying, all right, you ate a pork sandwich for lunch in 1952. You're going to burn now for 6 hours. It doesn't give anything to God. What God wants to do is to fix the deficiency in the relationship between the person and God that was caused by that sin. Each sin causes a deficiency, and each deficiency could be rectified. So, a good example is we spoke about the blacksmith, right? If somebody ruins the metal plate, let's say, how do you fix it? You put it in the kiln till it gets red hot and you refashion it, right? Is the red hot fire a punishment for the plate? Or are you just fixing the broken plate? Right? You're fixing it. After a person passes away, there are levels where he finds himself where God fixes those deficiencies that he caused. Now those levels of fixing might cause pain to the soul, but the pain is necessary, just like an operation is necessary to fix the body. The most wicked person, the sages tell us, is it takes 12 months to fix all the problems that he could have done to himself. So when we say Kaddish for someone for 11 months, because we know the person we're saying Kaddish for is not the most wicked person in the world. So the most that he's got to be fixed for is 11 months. So in order to bring more merit to his soul, we say Kaddish for those 11 months. Every time we say Kaddish, it adds in a merit, and it speeds up the process of fixing any deficiency that soul might have, and it gets it much quicker into Gan Eden, into the world to come. And even there, every year we say Kaddish, the person could go up in higher levels. But the period of time that a person is suffering, you might want to call it a punishment, but it's not really a punishment. As I say, it's a cleanse it's a cleansing, is only a finite amount of time.
So 11 months in our understanding.
So for most people, yes, it won't last more than 11 months. Could be less, not likely to be more. Okay? What time is it?
It's 10 to 9.
Okay, so we'll finish off this discussion and then we'll break. So what's Titus's judgment? Every day his ashes are gathered and they're scattered, and he's burnt again and scattered amongst the seven seas. Okay, pretty harsh. Azol aske libilam binegida. Now Uncle says, all right, I hear you, Titus. He goes and he brings up Bilam through necromancy. Amrle, Uncle asks Bilam, "My chashabahu alma, what's important in that world?" Okay, he thinks maybe Titus is lying to him. He wants a second opinion. So he asks Bilam. Everyone knows the story of Bilam? Yeah? Okay, good. Amrle, Bilam answers, Yisrael, the Jewish people are important in that world, in the world to come. Maulid Buki Bihu, Uncle asks Bilam the same question, so should I become Jewish? Amrle, Bilam answered him, Leitidrai shleimam v'toivasam kol hayomim. Seek neither their peace nor their benefit all the days. This is a verse in the Torah says in reference to the people of Moab. God says the people of Moab were so horrible to you, don't seek their peace or benefit ever. Don't make peace with them. What do? You remember what they did? This is a verse in reference to what they did on the advice of Bilam. When Bilam came to curse the Jewish people, the famous story, God doesn't let him curse, and he ends up blessing the Jewish people. So then he tells Balak, before he goes home, he says, listen, I'll give you a good piece of advice. The Jewish God hates immoral behavior. If you get them to sin immorally, God will want to punish them. So the leaders of Moab sent their daughters to entice the Jewish people to sin with immoral sins. The Torah even tells us how one of the priests of one of the princes of one of the tribes goes publicly in front of Moses, has relations with a princess of Moab in front of Moses and say, hey, is this okay or not? And that's the famous story of Pinchas killing them, right? So after what happened there, God says that the people of Moab are so horrible, don't seek their peace ever. So Bilam takes this verse and he turns it around and tells Onkelos, don't seek the peace of the Jewish people, meaning don't become Jewish. Amr Lai Onkelos asks Bilam, Dinai de Hugar b'mai, what's your punishment? How do they judge you in the world to come? Amrle, Bilam says, B'shivcha zerer esachas, I'm punished with boiling semen. Okay, because what was his sin? He caused Jewish people to sin with immoral relations, semen. So his punishment is that he's put into a boiling vat of semen and boiled in it. Seems harsh, right? But again, midah keneged midah, that's measure for measure.
So how is a measure for Titus with spread over the seven seas simply
because that's what he said. He wished that he would be scattered and
so like after this 11 months is over, like we just all end up in Gan Eden, like all humans.
After the soul has been cleansed from all the deficiencies that it created throughout its life of sins, then it gets the benefit for all the good deeds it did in Gan Eden. So there is a reward for the good deed. Okay, everyone does some good, right? So there's some level of reward, and that's why tradition tells us that when we see a wicked person prospering in this life, it's because God doesn't want him to have a big reward in the world to come. So he gives him some of the reward in this world. He has a good, easy life, and therefore, after he passes away, because he's so wicked, God doesn't have to give him his reward. Okay, one last person Onkelos decides to bring up. Azal aska begida lepoisha Yisrael. Onkelos goes and he raises the sinner of Israel through necromancy. Which sinner it is not written in this edition. Many rabbis, many commentaries say that the censors took it out for obvious reasons, but it's a Jewish person who sinned, and it doesn't give his name. Amrle, Onkelos asks this Jewish sinner, "My chashav hama, who's prominent in the world to come?" Amrle, he answers Onkelos, Yisrael, the Jewish people. Ma'alid v'kabehu, same question. He asks, should I become Jewish? Amrle, he answers Onkelos, Tevasam draish, rasam draish. You should seek their benefit. You should not seek their harm. Whoever touches the Jewish people is touching the pupil of God's eye. Amrlei Onkelos asks him, Dina dehu gabramai, how are you being punished in the world to come? Amrlei, he answers Onkelos, Bitsaya reitachas, I'm punished with boiling feces. The Amr Mar, because Mar says in a different Gemara, Kol hamalig al divrei chacham, whoever mocks the words of the sages, nidim b'tzayir tachas, his punishment is boiling feces. And this individual had mocked the sages during his lifetime, so that was his punishment. We're almost finished here. The Gemara is just going to comment now on the difference between the last person he brought up through necromancy, who was a Jewish sinner, and the first two who were not Jewish. Tochaze, come and see. Ma ben Pash Yisrael Neviya Umas Alim of Devad. What's the difference between the sinner of the Jewish people and the prophet of the idol worship, Bilam, who was a prophet of the idol worshipping nation? The Jewish sinner advised Onkelos to seek the benefit of the Jews, and Bilam, who was the prophet of the idol worshippers, advised them not to seek their benefit. Now the Gemara finishes off the story. Tanya is taught in a brisa. Amar Rabbi Elazar said, Borei kama gedolei koicha shel busha. Come and see how great is the power of shame. Shariseyo HaKadosh Baruch Hu es Bar Kamsa. God assisted Bar Kamsa in his plot. You remember his plot to get the Romans to come destroy Jerusalem and the temple, because he was put to shame, because he was publicly shamed. The Hechrivis Beisoi v'Sarafes Echalei, and he destroyed his temple and he burnt his sanctuary. So God even destroyed his own temple and his own people because of the shame that one person, Bar Kamsa, had when he suffered being publicly shamed. That ends the first story. If you remember the beginning of the Gemara, we brought from Mishlei, we brought from Proverbs, that a person always has to calculate the consequences of his actions, and the Gemara brought this story to show how the rabbis did not calculate the consequences of their actions and led to the destruction of the temple. And for Ben's benefit, next week we're going to discuss the second story, when they did not calculate the consequences of their action, with the rooster and the hen.
Okay. Thank you so much.